Welcome to this episode of Rebecca Sounds Reveille. Today on the show, I have a guest who's going to really bring a smile to your face and give you a lot of information that you're going to be able to use. And with us today is Dr. Daniel Twogood. He is amazing. We're going to be talking today about inflammatory foods and chronic pain. And this is really important because there is a correlation. And Dr. Twogood is a chiropractor. He graduated from the University of California, Santa Barbara, and has a degree in physical education. You'll understand why this is important as we go through our discussion today. And he was also a graduate from Cleveland Chiropractic College in Los Angeles, where he graduated Magna Cum Laude. And I think that this is another area that is very, very important, and you'll see why as well. Not only that, but he has practiced in international sports medicine, and he has written books, and you're going to see again why this is so important. I will allow him to share what those are because this is something he's very passionate about. Welcome to the show, Dr. Twogood.
Hey, thank you very much. I hope I can share some information that your listeners haven't heard before.
I have a feeling you're going to, because based on everything that I know about you, there is something very unique about what you're willing to share with us on the show today. And one of the things that I think many people don't realize is the role that food plays in inflammation and pain.
That's true. When you talk to medical doctors, if you talk about diet, they kind of look at you like, what are you talking about? Where are you coming from? This sounds hippie-ish, or this is whatever it is. But the whole notion that you can swallow something and it has an effect on your body is easy for most people to understand. As a matter of fact, conventional medics, what do? They examine you, they test you, they come up with a diagnosis, and then they instruct you to swallow very specific substances, pharmaceuticals, that they know are going to have an effect. But the disconnect is in the fact that they don't realize that everything else you swallow has an effect also. And so as a chiropractor, I treat people with neck pain, back pain, and headaches. And who would think that that was related to the diet? I never thought it was, but it's so importantly connected that if that is left out, you're going to have people who suffer with chronic conditions like fibromyalgia, rheumatoid arthritis, chronic back pain, migraine, psoriasis, many, many diseases that conventional medics can't tell you two things about. That's number one, what causes them, and how do you treat them? They have no idea. So when you get a diagnosis that's chronic, you're lost. And so if I told your listeners the same stories they've heard, these are medications work, these supplements work, these exercises work, you should do this and this and this, they've already heard all that. But they haven't heard that, guess what? The specific substances that you're swallowing, many of them are causing your pain. And the solution only comes when you figure out what those are, or we figure out what they are, and you eliminate them. Then the human body heals itself.
Yes, and this is really an amazing discovery that you have figured out, that there was a connection and between the diet and pain, and that it could be, I don't know if you say reversed or something that we can overcome. But this is huge because you're right. What we do ingest can really have an impact us in a positive way or in a negative way. I mean, there's a lot of things that you're hearing now when it comes to insecticides or things being contaminated through this or through that. But we forget that food is something that we ingest as well, and that can play into how we're feeling.
Absolutely. All of my work is based on my firm belief that the human body is a well-built organism and it can heal itself. You've seen it. Everybody has seen it. You've cut yourself, bruised yourself, broken a bone, and what happens? Without doing anything, your body heals itself. So when you have a chronic condition, what you have is your well-built body is failing to heal. And so the notion with many people is that, well, something is missing. You need a supplement, you need a drug, you need something to add to your system. But the bottom line is your body is not healing because something is interfering with the process. Our most intimate contact with substances that either nourish us or poison us or do both is what we swallow, allow into our digestive tracts and into our bloodstreams. That's where it all comes from. And it's a matter of figuring out what those things are and making very specific changes. You know, there's a lot of people saying, well, you should avoid GMOs and you should eat organic and you should do holistic foods. You should do a ketogenic diet, do the Pritikin diet. All of these general notions are kind of like a doctor. If you went to a medical doctor with a problem, they analyze you, they figure out what's wrong. They don't say, okay, you have this, you have high blood pressure, you have arthritis, and you have migraines, and so I want you to go take some pills. Mm-hmm. They don't say that. They say, I want you to very specifically take this pill, it's going to have this effect, and this pill, and these specific doses, no more, no less. The same thing is true of the diet. If I said, I want you to all eat organic, that's a blanket approach that doesn't really work. So a lot of times when I prescribe diets for people, they do include some unhealthy things. However, those substances that are the goodies that they like to keep are not pro-inflammatory. It's all about, all pain is caused by inflammation. The solution is for the inflammation to go away. Now, the very best way for inflammation to go away is for the body to heal itself. And the natural process, the inflammation is a functional thing. It will heal the body and the pain will go away. But people who suffer with chronic pain, they're stuck on inflammation. So why is that? Something is feeding the inflammation. And it's a matter of figuring out what it is, a pro-inflammatory substance, and eliminate it or them, whatever they may be.
So that's a very amazing concept because it is so simple. And you have people, let's say, in their younger years, and a parent will take them and have them food allergy tested, let's say. But we don't think as we get older that food can be attributable to our pain. And so we end up sort of in this routine of things that we eat and the things that we don't, or the supplements that we take and the supplements we don't. But I think that this is really important. I'm wondering, though, if there is sort of a set of or a common known inflammatory food.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would tell you the title of my first book, but I don't want to give it away. So, because that would tell you what it is. You know, just like if you have a sprained ankle or a painful back or a headache and you go to a medical doctor, there's only a handful of anti-inflammatory substances that they may prescribe. Ibuprofen, naproxen, aspirin, Tylenol. Yeah. There's a handful. And so if you go to the doctor lots of times, you'll say, guys, they always prescribe the same thing. Right, because these are the most effective anti-inflammatory drugs available today. What they don't realize is there are common pro-inflammatory substances. And believe it or not, when our discussion is through, you're going to find out there's only a handful of them that apply in most cases. And many people, it's only one or two. And once those are figured out, you can control your symptoms.
This is absolutely amazing. Now, do you have workshops and seminars that you do?
I do talks wherever I can. I wrote my first book. I'm not a writer, but when I started making these discoveries, I thought, you know what, I better get this information out there or somebody else is going to claim they discovered it. That first book was written in 1992, so that's 25 years ago, and I still find it an uphill battle to sell this notion. It seems to me that this notion should explode because people can control their symptoms and by simple diet changes. It sounds hokey to some people who are not holistic, but it is true. So I talk wherever I can, and my books are out there. The information is out there. The problem is it's like a gym membership. I say in the beginning of my newest book, which is called Chronic Pain Gone 90 Days, I said, reading this book is not going to help you. Just like buying a gym membership is not going to help you get in shape. You've got to go. So in my book that I wrote, this last one, I wrote it very cryptically. In the first 5 minutes of reading it, you will know exactly what you have to do in order to get rid of chronic pain and how long it's going to take. The time is in the title, it's 90 days. And you know, that's the time of healing from almost anything.
Yes.
A lot of things, cuts and bruises, heal within a shorter period of time. But by 90 days, if you haven't healed, something is interfering with the process. So this is a list of the substances that cause that interference.
Mm-hmm. And isn't it also that 90 days forms a habit?
Oh, absolutely. Not only that, it gets rid of cravings, because many people, in fact, I'll tell you right off the bat, just to blow some people's minds, when I talk to people about what are the most common pro-inflammatory substances, we're going to talk about one, which is the most, but you know what the most powerful one is? The most powerful cause of pain is chocolate, more than anything else in the world. And when my patients hear me describe what the treatment program is for them, they go and research and they come back and they say, you know, there's a lot of information about how that first thing, the most common cause of inflammation, that's all over the place. However, nobody says chocolate is bad. In fact, they say that it's an antioxidant,
Yes.
and it's healthy, especially dark chocolate, et cetera, et cetera.
Correct.
But the information that I'm sharing is based purely on observation. It's like an on-off switch. You know, when people consume chocolate, they have severe pain. Not everybody, but people who are sensitive to it. And when they stop eating the chocolate, the pain goes away. Now, I've seen that hundreds of thousands of times. So these same patients can read that, oh, dark chocolate is good for me, but I say, but don't you notice that when you have it, you have a headache? And when you stop it, the headache goes away? They go, yeah, so it's not good for you. Right. So again, I'm a macroscopic guy. I tell people what to expect to see. And once they see it themselves, then they can control their symptoms. And like you said, chocolate, for example, is a highly addictive substance. In fact, I used to use the word allergy a lot because these reactions are actually allergic reactions. However, people are turned off by allergy, or they think, well, I don't have sinus problems, my eyes don't itch, it's not allergy.
Right.
They don't realize that a swollen knee or a headache can also be the allergy. But the technically correct term is actually allergy addiction, because usually what you're allergic to as far as foods, you're addicted to. And so what happens is, when you quit the substance, you go into withdrawal. And your body knows there's only two ways out of withdrawal. You can either ride it out like a heroin addict or a coffee drinker who quit, or you can take a hit of chocolate or heroin or caffeine, whatever it is. So if you start to withdraw from, you don't have your chocolate for a few days, your body starts going nuts and gives you the craving. And so you go get the chocolate. So you've got to get through that withdrawal period before you can get, and like you said, the habit becomes formed and the addiction goes away. So that's what you're looking for. And I know personally, because I'm a chocoholic and I never, ever, ever eat chocolate.
that is so interesting. You know, we just don't think about that in terms of our body reacting to a food as an allergen. That just is not something we typically think about. I mean, when people are young, parents will take their children to the pediatrician and they'll say, well, we kind of need to test for this because that person has a rash. But as adults, we don't tend to see things like we do with childhood illnesses, and we tend to not worry as much. And most of us will try to avoid the doctor as much as possible anyway. And yet we're still going, I don't know how to treat this. Or
right.
We've gone to the doctor and we've gone through all the medication, all the physical therapy, all of, radioactive frequency, or whatever the case may be, epidurals, steroid shots, blah, blah. And there's still those who are experiencing chronic pain are not finding relief. And simply one area that is overlooked is their diet.
It's amazing. Like I said, if you ask a doctor, have you thought about how my doctor might affect this? Look at the look in their eye. All of a sudden they're glazed over. They're like, what are you talking about? And so the metaphor I use is that Doctors are great. They're smart. They're well educated. They try really hard. They have very powerful diagnostic tools, great imaging. They're doing all the right thing. But the metaphor I use is they're all looking for the needle in the haystack. And you know what? You know why they can't find it? The needle is not in the haystack. And so all these questions that you ask about, what did you do? Where did you go? All these questions are not going to answer. The answer is in what did you allow into your bloodstream? And that's where you start to see the symptoms. Now, I've been doing it for a long time. I consider myself very, very good at interviewing people and getting to the bottom of what's doing it. My weakness is convincing people that this is what they have to do, and they have to do it 100%. You talk about allergens. The foods and the substances that cause chronic inflammation are of two kinds. They are allergens. Allergens are substances that some people react to and some people don't. For example, people who are allergic to peanuts. Some of them have anaphylactic, horrible reactions to peanuts, but most people don't. So most people can eat peanuts. The other thing about allergens is allergens are not dose dependent. What that means is, and the peanut allergy people know this, you get a little bit of it, you react. So allergens are like that. The other kind of substances that cause chronic inflammation are toxic substances. Toxic substances are things that everybody reacts to. For example, alcohol. Everybody, if they drink enough alcohol, they will have a neurological reaction to the alcohol. Carbon monoxide, caffeine, all these poisons, toxic substances. But there's a lot of food additives that are actually toxins, and they can cause reactions that include chronic pain, migraines, panic attacks, mood changes, swelling, digestive upset, et cetera, et cetera. So if everybody, if we could convince the whole medical professions to all start looking at what's going in the human body and how people react, the plethora of information would be amazing, and more people would be helped. So hopefully that will happen one day.
Now, in your books, does it disclose the things that are in the processed food that someone would need to look for as an inflammatory substance?
Yes. The very first, I list the allergens and toxins in order. What's the most common? We haven't discussed that yet. We're going to. The most powerful is chocolate. And the third one on the list is a toxic substance. It's a food additive called monosodium glutamate, which is MSG. I wrote a little book about it years ago called MSG is Everywhere. And the reason I called it that is because MSG is everywhere in processed foods, in restaurant foods. So it's hard to avoid. It's hidden under lots of names, and it causes severe reactions in people who are sensitive to it. But like alcohol, some people can drink a lot and not be affected. Same thing with MSG. Some people can eat a lot of it and not really be affected. Some people are extremely sensitive to it, and it can cause horrible, horrible symptoms that most of the time don't go noticed because doctors never ask the question, what did you eat to cause this reaction?
Yes. This is quite interesting, and it's amazing how you found the correlation between the two. How did you, or what were you doing that led up to this discovery?
That's a good story, because I would like to think that I'm the inventor of it and I'm brilliant and I came up with it, but I actually stole it from a patient. I was young. I had been in practice for about 3 years, and a man came in to see me who had injured his shoulder. He was 53. We ended up doing about 3 weeks of therapy, chiropractic care, and he recovered, and I've never seen him since. But a few years after that, I wrote my first book, and I dedicated it to him. I remembered his name. I had his chart, the whole thing. But he told me this story that I didn't believe. He came in with just a shoulder problem, and so I asked him, I said, have you ever had any other back problems, neck problems? He says, oh, yes. He says, I'm on disability. Severe back pain and migraines for 20 years, 24 hours a day. And I said, well, I'm a chiropractor. I can help you with that too. And he says, you don't need to. I'm cured. And so I was taken aback, and I said, okay, wait a second. In my experience, if you have something for 20 years, you've got it. It's not going away. And he said, no, it's been gone for 2 years. And so I said, so you had surgery, right? And he said, no. I said, you're taking medication? He goes, no. I said, you went to a chiropractor? He said, I went to lots of chiropractors. They couldn't help me. I go, how did you get cured? And he said he went to lots of doctors, took all kinds of pills, had all kinds of tests, had all kinds of therapies. The only thing that came up repetitively from medical doctors was that he had high cholesterol. And they said, your cholesterol is extremely high. You're going to die of a heart attack if we don't put you on medication for it. His cholesterol was 285. He didn't want to take medication. He said, I just want my back fixed. And they said, you have chronic pain, you can't fix it, just take pills. So, but they scared him about his cholesterol. So he said, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to take the pills, but unless I can, and unless I have to, I'm going to first try changing my diet and getting some exercise. So he read up on cholesterol. And this is what he found out about cholesterol. Cholesterol in the diet exists only in foods that come from animals. So that's all of the meat foods, chicken, fish, pork, beef. It comes from eggs from chickens and dairy foods from cows. So he said, I'm going to cut out all these foods and not eat cholesterol. It's got to go down. So that's what he did. He went to the doctors 3 months later for a checkup. He had lost 20 pounds. He was walking 3 miles a day. His cholesterol dropped 100 points. And he said, but the weird thing was his pain was totally gone. And that sounds like such a hokey story, doesn't it? And so I said, you mean your pain was less? Because you were healthier, it was less, right? He goes, no, totally gone. He bent over and touched his toes. He said, I've been using a walker for 20 years. He says, I'm fine now. No migraines, no pain at all. And so I said, so do you think your symptoms were caused by your cholesterol? And he said, no. I said, do you think it was caused by your diet? And he says, absolutely. And I said, do you know what was causing it? He says, I know exactly what was causing it. And I said, what was it? And he said, and here's the most common cause of chronic inflammation. He said, milk. And I said, milk. He said, well, not only milk. He said, but everything made from milk. Cheese, yogurt, ice cream, cottage cheese, ranch dressing, blue cheese, all the dairy foods. I said, why do you think that? And he said, see, most doctors, and he said lots of doctors did that to him. They said, you're out of your mind. Go out of my office. Take your pills. Don't tell me this bogus stuff. But anyways, I was young, and so I said, wow, what is this all about? So he told me this story. And so I said, how do you know this for sure? And he said, well, he cut out dairy foods, eggs, and all the meat. He got better. He got tired of eating that way after 6 months. He actually got off of disability and went back to work. He'd been on disability for 20 years. So he started missing meat. So he started adding meat back into his diet, and he had no problems. He added eggs back into his diet, no problems. He said, but every time he ate a dairy food, his back went out and he got a migraine for 4 days.
Wow.
And I thought he was out of his mind, and I told him that. I said, you know what? I've never heard of that. And he says, I've never heard of it either. He says, but I can tell you right now, if I have pizza tonight, my back's going to go out tomorrow and I'm going to have a migraine. He says, I've done it lots and lots of times. He said, so I strictly stay away from those foods. So that was all the information I had. I finished treating him. Off he went. I went and looked in the books because I was curious. This is before the internet. And I couldn't find anything that said anything like that. So I kind of discounted it. But then a few months later, I had a really difficult case, a young woman. Nothing was working. She'd been to everybody else. And she was crying about, she said, what can you do now? I said, I'm going to refer you to somebody else. And she started crying. I said, what's the matter? She goes, I've been to everybody else. I've been to neurologists. What do I do? She says, don't you know anything else? Boom, it hit me in the head. And I said, well, let me ask you a weird question. I said, do you drink any milk? And she said, I drink a lot of milk. Why? So I told her the story. And I said, I know nothing about it, but that's the only thing I have left in my arsenal. She says, okay, I'll do it. She said, I'll stop drinking milk. I said, well, wait, it's not that easy. It's also cheese and yogurt and ice cream and cottage cheese. So she did it. 10 days. In 10 days, that's well below my 90 days that I say in the book, she was totally pain-free. We were treating her with chiropractic care at the same time. I treated her for about a month or two. She recovered and off she went. Didn't see her for 3 months. Then she called one day and said, can I come in? And I said, sure. She came in. Her boyfriend had to carry her in. She was in severe back pain. She couldn't even move. She came in, we talked, and I'm looking at my notes, and I'm saying, listen, it's been 3 months since you've been here. Why did you wait so long? And she says, I've been perfect for 3 months, no problems. She said, until this morning. And I said, what happened? She goes, I don't know. So I looked at my notes, and I said, we took you off of dairy foods. Are you still off of them? She goes, yeah, 100%. No cheese, no milk, no nothing. So I'm not going to drag this out, but so I finally got to the point where, you were okay last night. You're not okay today. What happened last night? Where did you go? What did you do? She said, I worked. I was awake. She's a waitress. She says, I didn't have any big, bad issues, no problems. I said, so this is how I always put the cases together. I ask a ton of questions and drive people nuts. So I said, so what did you do after work? She said, my friends and I went out and had pizza. And so I went, pizza with cheese. She goes, oh, I forgot. She said, but that's the only dairy I've had. So she had pizza on a Friday night, severe pain on Saturday. Honestly, neither one of us thought they were connected. But I said, listen, they worked before, so cut out all the dairy foods. We'll start all over again. She came back in on Monday. She was fine. I released her. 2 weeks later, on a Friday night, she and her friends went out and had pizza. Saturday, she was in the office again. So that's the first time I saw it, and I really didn't believe it. It took me, that was 1985. I finally wrote the first book about it in 1992. So I had to see it a bunch of more times. And then, of course, you have the problem with compliance. A lot of people will say, well, I'm following your diet, when in fact they're not. Right. So it's a real painful process to practice this way. And that's why a lot of doctors don't want to do it. I ask a ton of questions, and I know how to get around things where people don't remember stuff and don't know stuff and about what they eat themselves. And many times, so the most common cause of chronic inflammation is a protein that's in milk and dairy foods. It took me years to discover that too. It's called casein. So it's the casein that causes the inflammatory reaction. So there are some foods that are called non-dairy that contain a substance called sodium caseinate. Guess what? It causes the same reaction. So people will go to a non-dairy coffee creamer. They're still getting the casein, which is causing the inflammatory reaction. And if you have a sensitivity to it, if you put some cream in your coffee and consume it and you have a sensitivity to casein, that will raise the level of inflammation in your body for 3 or 4 or 5 days from the one exposure. So if all you're doing is creamer in your coffee, even a non-dairy coffee creamer, that can keep you in chronic pain all the time. So every case is different, but if you took all of the people in the country who suffer, if you took all the people in the country and found out which ones were sensitive to milk and dairy foods, it would be less than half. However, if you take all of the people who suffer with chronic pain and find out which ones are sensitive, it would be 90%. So 90% of people who suffer with some form of chronic pain, casein is the culprit or one of the culprits and has to be eliminated 100% before they can recover.
That's
sad story, isn't it?
Interesting, because you've heard people say, oh, well, I'm lactose intolerant.
Right. That's different. There are, every food contains 3 things: protein, carbohydrate, and fat. The protein portion of milk is made up of 3 proteins: casein and 2 others that make up the protein that's called whey. You've seen whey before. There's whey protein shakes, etc. Those 2 proteins are not inflammatory, not pro-inflammatory. Casein is. Lactose is the sugar portion of milk, the carbohydrate portion, and some people have a problem digesting it, and so they get gas, bloating, diarrhea, digestive upset from the lactose. So the mistake that's made from people who have, let's say, something like migraines or psoriasis, which can be caused by the casein, they know they're sensitive to milk, so they go to lactate milk that has taken out the lactose. But guess what? It still contains the casein. So they're going to get that reaction. So it's very specific. The casein has to be eliminated, and that's the most common cause of fibromyalgia, rheumatoid arthritis, migraines, back pain, etc. Many, many things.
This is very fascinating, and I think it's something that our viewers really need to take a look at, because this isn't something that is pretty much in mainstream medical in really going through this, but it's something that's much needed and can make an immediate difference in someone's life. And the most important thing, as you've said, is to do this for 90 days and be committed to really discovering what's going on and then replacing those things with something that isn't going to be inflammatory.
For example, milk, there's many alternatives on the market now. They used to, when I first started doing this, the only alternative was 2 different kinds, Mocha Mix and Vitamite, which was a soy milk. But now there's almond milk, which is very good. Silk makes a good product. Any plant-based milk is going to be okay and be devoid of that protein. So you can have almond milk on your cereal. There's some coffee creamers out now that are actually pretty good that you can use to cream your coffee. And so there are alternatives. Unfortunately, the biggest complaint people have, the thing they want to miss, that they're going to miss the most, and they go, oh no, cheese. I love cheese. I want to have cheese. There are no good substitutes for cheese on the market right now. Most of them contain sodium caseinate, if they call them non-dairy cheese, which is still inflammatory. I have found a couple of cheeses that don't have milk protein in them. They do not taste like cheese.
No.
Sad to say.
Kind of like when you go from a regular soda to diet soda, it just does not taste the same.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, and which is something that people can be allergic to as well. As you said, caffeine can be an allergen. So, a lot of times, the things that we take for granted every day that are so available to us and so easy with the lifestyle that we live, if we would just take the extra time to really identify the things that aren't healthy for us as individuals, then
Right.
and that's the important thing is what is going to be working for me may not work for you, but I need to know this because I can't be living in this kind of an environment within my body.
Right. Unfortunately, the things that cause chronic pain, like the dairy foods and the chocolate and the MSG, they taste really, really good. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's hard for people to give them up because there's the addictive process going on too. But the other thing is that if you just say that if you eliminate these things, you're going to be healthier, most people aren't motivated by that. But if you tell them, you know, that sharp headache you get right here 2 or 3 times a week, this chemical right here, casein or chocolate or MSG or aspartame or gluten or whatever it is, that's what's causing it. And so they might go, wow, well, I don't want this anymore, so I will cut that out. If they're just going to be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and have more energy, you know, they're not motivated by that, most people. So it
Mm-hmm.
has to be specific.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think it's really important. I think the work that you're doing and getting it out there is essential to making a difference in the lives of those who are experiencing chronic pain and having painful episodes. I think that if it's addressing chronic pain, even pain that is something that is not chronic, it can work on that too, and especially if your body is having all of its resources available to combat the stuff that it doesn't want to accept. And
Absolutely.
so I really would like our audience to be able to know the name of your books, where to contact you, and how they can get in touch with you.
That's very easy. This is me and my wife in the office, so we answer all the phone calls. If somebody wants to talk to me, they get through, and I have to return the call, but I return all calls. My email address, which I answer all emails, is my name is Dr. Twogood, Twogood, like the number 2 and good. My email is drtwogood@aol.com. I have a web page. It's my name, danieltwogood.com, where you can see some videos. I did some YouTube videos to explain this information. So the information is out there. It's just that when it becomes cool, you know, like who would have thought that people would flock to a coffee shop that sold coffee for $5 a cup? You
Right.
know, but what happened is Starbucks became cool. And so people did it because it was faddish. Right now, if somebody's smoking a cigarette, most people would look at them and go, my gosh, what are you doing? This is terrible. You know it's terrible. We all know it's terrible. But right now, if somebody ate chocolate or was consuming milk products, they wouldn't know that it's terrible for them. But if it becomes popular, then and it becomes cool, then more people will do it. One lady, she's been a patient for many years. She's never changed her diet. She rolls her eyes all the time. So she shows dogs. And she went away to Arizona to a dog show. And she ran into one of her ladies that she sees all the time at these shows who's always walking with a cane. And the lady wasn't walking with a cane. And so she said, wow, how come you're not using a cane? She says, because my arthritis is gone. She goes, really? What happened? She goes, well, I read this book by this chiropractor. And so then she says, well, who was the chiropractor? She says, well, Dr. Twogood. Well, this lady who's all, you know, egotistical says, well, guess what? That's my chiropractor. That's who I go to. And so the lady said to her, so of course you follow his diet, don't you? And of course she didn't. And so guess what? She was motivated at that point. And for about a year, she did. And she had a miraculous recovery. Now she's gone back to old ways again. So it's very difficult to do. But the convincing part is that people are not so convinced when they get better. A lot of times they get better and they kind of think, oh, great, I got better. What will convince them, if they're still paying attention, is to look at when they have a setback and correlate it to what they just ate.
Right.
And once they see that, now in my reaction, I stay away from dairy foods, but every once in a while when I have one, I do have a reaction in my knee. It's 2 days out. It's 48 hours after I consumed it. The typical reaction time is 2 to 12 hours, but sometimes it can be up to 48 hours. The other thing people should realize is that a lot of people will eliminate the dairy and the chocolate and the MSG, which are the big three for most chronic pain.
Okay.
And after 3 or 4 days, they'll go, I'm not any better. Well, that's because the first 7 days, there's very often no change at all. And there's often withdrawal where you actually feel worse. So most symptoms start to change gradually between 7 days and 30 days. So you have to know the time frames. You can't just go a couple of days and go, that didn't work. So it's a difficult process. And if you read the book, you'll know specifically what those substances are and how to eliminate them.
I love it. I am so glad that you have allowed others to really see what is available and make it available for them to see for themselves. I'm just very impressed with this. So I want to thank you so much for being on the show. I really am absolutely just enthralled with this, and I'm ready to go out and read all of your books and apply these things to myself and see what is working for me and what is not.
By the way, you can download them for a pittance. If you have an Android phone, you can go to the App Store, the Google App Store, and get it for 99 cents. Download it onto the phone. It has the pictures in it. It has everything. If you have an iPhone, I think it costs $3 or $4 to download it. You can get the books at Amazon. So if you just put in my name, Twogood, Twogood, you'll see them all. The book I wrote before this one, Chronic Pain Gone 90 Days, was called How to Rid Your Body of Pain. It's thicker and it's more, there's a lot of information. It's very thick. The last one I wrote is 200 pages, but it's to the point. So I explain what you have to do, and then the second half of the book is why you're doing this, what you can expect, and what we've seen. So if you get yourself through the book, it will be crystal clear about what you have to do. Then the onus is on you, and it's a matter of if you can follow the instructions.
Fantastic. I love it. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you for watching today. I hope that you've had an opportunity to really understand some things that you need to know and what is going to make a huge difference in how you're feeling and not wanting to feel anymore. So don't forget to take a few moments and go to Dr. Twogood's website, check out the information, get a copy of his book, and see how much different your life is going to be. I hope that you will share this episode both with your friends and family, but also your colleagues, and pass it along on social media. I thank you again for watching. You have been watching Rebecca Sounds Reveille.